Hey everybody, my name is Stuart and I'm so glad that you're here on the channel. Today I'm going to be dealing with the topic on limiting beliefs. Now I know a lot of people have been looking out for guides on how to break their old belief patterns, but trust me, it's actually quite easy to do if you have the right kinds of tools. So we're going to learn how to break our limiting beliefs in just 5 key steps. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. I've been training people over the last 29 years in the area of personal and mental mastery. If you'd like to find out more, subscribe to the channel so that you'll be able to be updated on all of my other tips and tricks to arrive at personal mastery. So let's dive right into the strategy for breaking your limiting beliefs. Before that, let me share with you a little bit about how I came across limiting beliefs. I never knew there was such a thing called a limiting belief. That's because I had a limit in my mind. I needed a coach to give me some idea in terms of what was a limiting belief by pointing it out to me. For example, I used to say to myself that all of this is too much for me, or it's impossible for me to get to a certain outcome. These limiting beliefs were nothing more than an ingrained form of self-talk inside my head. And if you want to find out more about self-talk literature, I've got some information and you can find it down in the description box below. After all, whenever we talk to ourselves and we form up this solid concrete habit, it simply fades into our unconsciousness, doesn't it? So what I want to do is to be able to firstly uncover that and utilize that as a target board for improving my internal self-talk and then put it back inside my head so that it becomes unconscious for me. So here's the first step, is to identify and uncover your limiting belief. Look at what your limitations are in the first place. What do you fear? What do you feel like is going to stop you whenever you move forward? One of the things that happens to me every single day is I try to work out and sometimes I've got a lot of negative self-talk inside my head. I honestly do not feel like working out. And in fact, right now my phone is signaling an alarm to let me go work out at this very moment. How coincidental. The truth is, whenever I think about working out, I don't feel like working out. But whenever I stop thinking about it, that internal self-talk just shuts off and then I can get my stuff done. However, until you're ready, you won't be able to directly accept or to deny whatever belief that's stopping you. So you need to write this down. Spend the next 5 minutes or so listing down the top things that you notice you're afraid of or that you're attempting to break through that you just haven't been able to do. Once you've listed this down, we can go into the next step. This second step is actually quite straightforward. It's all about making a list of questions to identify the truth behind the belief, identify the root source of this belief, and to answer the question, does this belief actually help me? Some questions that might be very relevant would be to question the truth and validity of this belief. For example, I might believe that I'm not good enough. Well, is it true? Perhaps at a certain level it is true. But why is it true? Well, it's probably true because I really don't have the skill sets or the experience to be classified as good enough. So once you know this, then at the end of the day, that particular belief is no longer limiting you, but rather unveiling a truth to you. And once you can accept that truth, then you can find a pathway to move forward. So for all of us who feel like we're not good enough, surely we can go learn something. And utilizing that as a belief, you can formulate a better belief pattern that can engender a higher rate of return by simply learning new things so that you can take action on it. So for example, I used to believe I was not good enough in public speaking. So what did I do? Rather than stop speaking, I started to do even more. And I started to study all the great speakers. I started to study people who are really good and efficient on stage. And as a result, slowly and surely, I ended up moving the needle from where I was not good enough to a time where I can feel like I'm relatively good. However, it also means that there's a very fine balance between arrogance and effectiveness. So sometimes I also need to keep myself in check by tapping into the feeling that sometimes I might not be as good as I think, just to remain humble. However, as with all things, this is a fine gray line, and without proper coaching and mentoring, it becomes a little bit of a challenge to just keep inside your head all the time. But I'd definitely write down a list of questions right now. Is this belief true? Who gave me this belief? For example, sometimes you might hear that the belief is something that your parents have been spouting off all this while. Is that necessarily true, or is it just a belief that you thought you had to follow simply because you've been hearing it all this while? Thirdly, the question, what evidence do I have that is counter to this belief, is known as a counterexample. For example, have there been times where I have been good enough, and when were those times? In most of my cases, whenever I felt like I was not good enough, it was primarily because I was trying to prove myself at a higher level and therefore gave myself a much bigger challenge than I could handle. However, when it was in a group of people who were largely supportive, my conversational skills were really good, and therefore my public speaking skills were acceptable. So whenever I took a look at those contradictions to my belief, it came to a point where I had to select the right kind of target audience in order for me to be good enough. And that's true, isn't it? So it's irrefutable that the belief that I have is limiting, but it's only limiting given certain kinds of target audiences. I can only imagine at the age of 19, I was attempting to teach executive leaders of large organizations how to run billion-dollar enterprises when I had no clue and I had no know-how at that point of time. Now, the problem with that belief is that it becomes very rigid the moment I start thinking about it on an unconscious basis. So that's why a lot of these beliefs tend to escape our view. However, once you've listed it down, it becomes easier. And once you've listed it down and found contra-indications to the belief that you have, it's very likely that you'll be able to loosen up that belief. It's no longer so rigidly stuck inside your mind. Now, once that happens and you take a look at the belief, you question it and you realize, oh, there is a different perspective, then you need to replace that belief. Think about it this way. If you go out and take a look at role models and they are functional in that area and they have a different belief, what would they say to themselves? You're now able to hunt for internal self-talk that you can then imbue inside of your own mind by replacing the old belief. So for example, you're not good enough. If you refine that, it might sound like, I'm not good enough in certain contexts, but I'm certainly good enough in many other contexts that make me feel good. So if that's the case, then replace that belief and then see that inside of your mind so that it becomes a little bit more solid. What do you see? What do you hear inside your mind? How are you interacting as if this new belief is true? And that is probably what will help you to replace the belief and solidify it so that it becomes functional for you as you move on through life. In that sense, everything about limiting beliefs is about these 3 key steps. Notice the belief, challenge the belief, and then replace the belief. Very straightforward, isn't it? However, replacing the belief does require some skill. For example, when are the times where those limiting beliefs are triggered? And are you able to catch those? Because once you're able to catch the trigger, then you can simply apply an if-then way of thinking. If this gets triggered, then I will say to myself these particular words or phrases that can engender a more positive belief. A lot of the time, the initial phases of forming up this belief as a new belief is going to require quite a fair bit of willpower. So initially, you might need to go inside of your mind and rehearse this new belief, making it more amplified and ensuring that up to a certain point, you're able to see it very, very clearly and very vividly. After all, it's all part of your mental and cognitive infrastructure. So what I would do is go inside and imagine myself believing what I want to believe and noticing how I behave and act as a result of this new set of beliefs. It becomes something that's functional. I can learn how to act on those new beliefs and make it really, really awesome for me. Now, beyond just doing this form of replacement, I also need to enact it in the real world. So the 4th step is to take action on those beliefs. For example, I'm not good enough in public speaking to I'm good enough in certain contexts to deliver public speaking. So what do? I start hunting for those contexts and apply it. In fact, once I've applied it, I might probably find that 2, 3, 4, 5 times is sufficient for me to lock in stage 3, which was to replace the limiting belief. Now, inside my mind, whenever I picture a stage, I'll probably feel that it's okay, I'm going to be doing well. So this form of taking action goes way beyond just the internal. It goes into the external. It helps you to apply what you need to apply in order to prove that belief to be true. In fact, one of the things that I often do is if I don't have a contra-indicating belief, all I need to do is create that counterexample by simply taking action. So for instance, I've gone up and delivered a presentation, fumbled over it, but was I uncomfortable? No. I ended up making a mistake, sure. But when I went up there, I was able to deliver effectively, even though it was not perfect. So given that situation, I now can challenge my own beliefs about what I did by just simply forcing myself to go get it done. Now, some people may say that that's not very functional and not very effective. What will happen if you fumbled and you cause that old belief to get solidified? Well, then you find alternative ways. You make up something inside your mind. Sometimes just pure imagination is sufficient for you to break free. In fact, I've often told people that when you take action, pretend that you're not the old version of you. Pretend that you're a new version of you, a new awesome version who can speak, who can deliver on stage. And you just imagine yourself stepping into the mind or the body of somebody who can do it, and utilize that imagination to role play a little bit. So in that sense, maybe it doesn't sound so bad. I've always told people that no matter what, you are the director of your own mental film reels inside your own head. And if you know how to harness the power of your imagination, you can be your own scriptwriter for a fantastic adventure moving forward. Now, of course, the fifth stage is to really reflect. If you don't take action, you won't be able to get new results. But if you do take action, you still need to reflect on the effects of that action. Are you moving the needle in a positive direction? Are you able to take action so well that the original belief is starting to fade away? Do you notice that? Or do you find that there are new limiting beliefs that crop up that you need to handle? So all of this form of reflection is a process of self-awareness so that your beliefs no longer stand in your way. Now, I would recommend that you do the reflection as a starting point so that you'll be able to see your entire series of beliefs in your life that are functional versus non-functional. Whenever you encounter non-functional beliefs, you need to list them down and go hunting. When you find functional beliefs, you need to ask yourself, what in the world made this belief functional? Why am I so good at this because of this belief? Like, for example, you may be terrible at public speaking, but you might be excellent in your studies. If you are terrible at your studies, maybe you're fantastic at working out on a diligent basis. What do you think about those where your beliefs are really solidified and positive and leaning you forward into what you need to do? Then you'll be able to model in a contrastive basis what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So if you've got limiting beliefs that don't work for you, find them, go hunt for them, identify what those limitations are, challenge them, and then replace them. What do you replace them with? More functional beliefs that you role model from other people or from instances in your life that are already functional. So that's exactly what I've tried to do. I take a look at my physical routines and I absolutely hate them because right now I'm thinking that once I finish with this video, I'm going to have to start doing my pull-ups straight away. And that pain is quite unbearable, but yet I can find ways to reframe that by looking at times where I have done my pull-ups, I have felt great about them, and I want to lean into that version of me rather than a version of me that feels that it's a hateful, painful exercise. So now, building up inside my head the reality before I get it done is going to change my states, and it's going to temporarily release me from the old rigid belief towards the new desired belief, and that's what I'll lean into every single day. So in summary, 5 key steps. Number 1, identify, list down all your beliefs. Number 2, make sure you challenge them. Identify reasons why they may not be true or they may not be accurate, or where the context is relevant only sometimes in some places but not in others. Number 3, replace those beliefs with a more positive and useful self-talk inside of your head so that the more you rehearse it, the more likely it is that it'll solidify. 4th, go take action to prove your belief. The more you can prove it, the more likely this belief will solidify into something that is more functional for you. And finally, do your reflections so that you'll be able to identify any other limiting beliefs and also identify where your strong beliefs can also facilitate your learning about yourself and lift you to a higher level of performance. So there you have it, these 5 key steps. I highly recommend that you go apply them. If you do this on a regular basis as a discipline, you're likely to hunt down all the unnecessary beliefs that you have in your head and replace them with something more powerful and live a more empowered life. If you know anybody who's got debilitating beliefs about themselves, share this video. It's a simple 5-step formula that everybody ought to know so that they can elevate themselves to a level beyond suffering and take actions for abundance. I'll see you in my next video.